300 years after a catastrophic event sent mana spiraling out of control and unleashed hordes of demons, 10 heroes rose up and created colossal barriers to shield humanity. Thanks to these barriers, civilization survived and entered the Age of Awakening, an era defined by the emergence of the first 10 legendary classes, now the pillars of society. It is now the year 335, in the city of Fenguan, where the annual class awakening ceremony is about to begin. Our protagonist, a spiky-haired young man, arrives at the testing site and casually thanks a man named Uncle Jang for giving him a ride. He surveys the bustling venue, where jobs range from common to NTUR rarity, with the highest tier classes guaranteeing admission to the top academies. Countless young hopefuls kneel before statues of the legendary class bearers, praying for a blessing strong enough to awaken a powerful class. As an attendant urges the crowd to move along, our hero notices a girl praying intensely at one of the statues. He chuckles to himself, amused by how high she's aiming. A young man approaches and explains that rumors say a new legendary class is predicted to appear this year, hence everyone's overwhelming devotion. The protagonist smirks, realizing that with so many people desperate for power, his business is about to flourish. Suddenly, a brilliant flash lights up the sky, followed by an announcement declaring that the awakening test has officially begun. Inside the venue, results roll in rapidly. A boy named Guy receives an S-class awakening with 55 mana points. The young man standing beside our protagonist is stunned by Guy's mana, wishing he had even a fraction of that energy. Hearing this, the protagonist turns to him and offers a tomato that supposedly boosts mana. He introduces himself as a specialist in spiritual plants and explains that the tomato increases mana by 5% for 5 minutes. He goes on to flaunt his other products: potatoes that keep you full for a whole day, cucumbers for rapid weight loss, and tubers that raise attack power by 10%. A curious crowd gathers. One person suspects a scam, another is eager to try the tomato because he's sick of energy bars. The protagonist smiles and announces that stock is limited, but the first customer can try a free sample. The doubtful young man accepts the tomato and takes a bite. Moments later, his eyes widen. His mana really did increase, and his body feels noticeably lighter. A man in a suit pushes through the crowd and recognizes the vegetables as academy-grade products. The protagonist immediately claims he's running a special public event. Delighted, the wealthy man grins and tells him to bag everything. He wants to buy it all. The crowd erupts, shouting over each other in excitement, praising the tomato, and scrambling to buy whatever they can. The protagonist then reveals that he's actually a max-level farmer, explaining why his crops grant powerful buffs and why all their effects are completely real. Later that day, our hero sits alone in front of a small shop, looking exhausted after a long shift. As he rests, someone descends the stairs toward him. It's the blonde man from earlier, carrying the items he'd purchased from the protagonist. He even hands over 10 gold coins as payment. Lin Fong accepts the money and admits he doesn't have enough funds to buy the high-grade fertilizer he needs to improve his fields. Grateful for the useful items, the blonde man asks why Lin Fong doesn't simply grow more of those miracle plants. With an irritated expression, Lin Fong explains that cultivating spiritual crops with such potent effects isn't easy at all. His friend sighs and remarks that Lin Fong had real talent but somehow ended up as a farmer. Lin Fong waves him off, telling him to go home since his aunt is probably waiting for him. Left alone again, Lin Fong reflects on how he was once praised as a genius but only awakened an N class. He imagines his father, an esteemed archdruid, rolling in his grave. Lin Fong believes his parents' talents must have canceled each other out, but at least he doesn't need to fight like his father did, nor does he have to worry his mother by living a dangerous life. Determined to make her proud, he commits himself to caring for the family farm. As he walks peacefully down the street, a single drop of liquid falls onto his nose. Bewildered, he looks up. The sky is perfectly clear. There's no way it could be raining. Suddenly, a man plummets from the sky, screaming in terror. Lin Fong stares upward, stunned, just before the man crashes into the ground. Panic surges through him as he wonders whether the city wall has been breached and demons have invaded. The fallen man is severely injured, surrounded by shattered equipment. Gasping for breath, he reveals that Hizizang, the legendary Necromancer, has betrayed humanity and intends to hand his class over to the demons. He tries to deliver a final warning, but before he can finish, a blast of purple energy hurtles down from the sky. Lin Fong is horrified. How could someone even transfer a legendary class to the demon clan? A moment later, the traitor emerges from a swirling portal and mocks the dying man, calling him a fool for not fleeing sooner. His Zhang explains that if he hadn't been injured, he would have escaped long ago, and that by giving his class to the demons, he'll gain an immortal body. Then the Necromancer's gaze lands on Lin Feng. Realizing he's in grave danger, Lin Feng tries to slip away unnoticed. But the villain calls out coldly, demanding to know who gave him permission to leave. In an instant, he seizes Lin Feng and reveals that the deceased man was a renowned Dean, one whose blood he intends to use as a sacrifice. Lin Feng feels the overwhelming pressure of the Necromancer's mana and realizes he cannot break free. Desperate, his eyes dart around for anything he can use to defend himself. That's when he spots one of the fallen man's tools lying on the ground within reach. At that moment, one of Lin Feng's skills, Max Mastery, Agricultural Tools, activates. The ability allows him to summon tools at will, and the fallen man's pickaxe flies straight into his hand. Lin Feng narrows his eyes and tells the Necromancer that sacrifices are something he should be making himself. In the next instant, he swings the pickaxe and strikes the villain, warning him that if he doesn't back off, he'll be the one taking a trip to the underworld. The Necromancer is hurled backward, staring in shock and disbelief. How could a mere farmer injure him? Before the enemy can recover, Lin Feng spots the fallen man's second weapon, a strange, hand cannon-like device. Without hesitating, he grabs it and fires. A pillar of blue energy erupts from the barrel and shoots directly toward the Necromancer. Startled, the traitor conjures a purple energy shield to block the blast. Even with the shield, the impact forces him to his knees, leaving him weakened and clearly wounded. Lin Feng then notices the glowing markings forming a demonic matrix beneath the Necromancer's feet. Realizing his situation is deteriorating, the Necromancer decides to abandon his current body. He declares that he'll simply possess Lin Feng instead. His form dissolves into a shadowy spirit and launches toward the young man. The shadow plunges into Lin Feng's body, and he screams as dark energy wraps around him like living chains. Yet even while being invaded, Lin Feng smirks, surprisingly confident. Inside him, the Necromancer mocks him, saying that for a low-class awakening, the boy's talent isn't bad. He should feel honored to become the vessel of a legendary Necromancer. But Lin Feng fires back that he's trained since childhood. If the Necromancer wants his body, he'll have to fight for it. He declares that even if he's considered a low rank, his strength is something the Necromancer could never dream of achieving. A moment later, Lin Feng collapses onto the ground, dark tendrils coiling around him. He mutters bitterly that luck really isn't on his side today. His trembling hand reaches toward a sharp piece of metal lying among the rubble. He grips it tightly. "If that's how it is," he murmurs, "then we're both going out with a bang." The Necromancer's spirit panics, demanding to know what the boy intends to do with that spear-like shard. Without a second of hesitation, Lin Feng drives the weapon into his own chest. He grits out that he'd rather die than surrender his body. In his final fleeting thoughts, he apologizes to his father, saying he isn't ready for another lecture in the afterlife. He collapses motionless, the improvised spear embedded in his chest and dark energy swirling violently around him. Then, all at once, a golden light bursts from his chest, radiating outward. Something extraordinary is awakening. Inside Lin Feng's body, the Necromancer's spirit recoils in terror. He wonders if the boy's mana is exploding. Chains of golden energy appear from nowhere and lash out at him. He screams that it's impossible. As the chains tighten around the Necromancer's spirit, they wrap him in a cocoon of golden energy, sealing him completely. A massive explosion follows, and the traitor's soul is utterly annihilated by the mysterious light. Suddenly, Lin Feng's eyes snap open. A system message appears, congratulating him on obtaining the Necromancer class. He stares at his reflection, stunned he's even alive after everything that happened. Then it hits him. He's still in control of his own body. The villain failed to possess him. Crouching down, he summons a flicker of purple energy in his hand, examining the new power coursing through him. A status screen materializes before him, revealing that his class has changed to Spiritual Farm Master, a unique, mutated evolution of his previous class. He studies the window, trying to process all the new information. His stats now read: Strength, 300. Constitution, 300. Agility, 100. Mana, 110. Spirit, 100. His level has been reset to 1, but all of his max-level farmer stats have been preserved. His mana also jumped thanks to the Necromancer's infused soul power, allowing him to surpass the limits of an ordinary farmer. He notices a brand new skill, Undead Summoning. With a bored expression, he wonders aloud whether he can summon the Necromancer himself. Green mana from his farmer class gathers in his left hand. In his right, purple Necromancer mana forms, swirling like mist. When he brings the two spheres together, he realizes the energies are merging. His class tree has split into two branches. Shocked, he finally understands. The man who attacked him truly was a legendary class. He glances at the traitor's corpse. For a moment, he wonders if the villain's power is still reacting, if perhaps the threat isn't fully over. A faint, instinctive dread hits him. If he doesn't master this hybrid power soon, his farmer class will collapse, and his mind could be devoured. Making a face, he complains about his class colors clashing, but his expression quickly shifts. He already has an idea. Standing up, he uses his new undead summoning skill for the first time. A purple magic circle appears beneath him, and the summoning energy surges toward the two bodies lying on the ground. Moments later, the spirits of both the Dean and the Necromancer rise as his undead servants. He checks their status and realizes they've retained their skills and can continue to level up. But he doesn't have time to celebrate. The authorities are on their way. No one would believe a farmer defeated two legendary figures, and if the truth got out, the consequences could be catastrophic. Smiling to himself, he decides he needs a safe place with good land and solid resources to test his abilities properly. A day later, back on his farm, Lin Fong senses that the Necromancer's influence on his class still hasn't completely faded. While he observes his fields, a television nearby shows a news anchor announcing the birthday of a well-known agronomy professor. Lin Fong glances back at his crops, now visibly altered and strangely transformed under the influence of his new power. The Necromancer's purple mana continues to mix with the green energy of Lin Fong's farming skills, causing his crops to undergo strange and unsettling mutations. Suddenly, one of the plants twists into a monstrous, tooth-filled creature and snaps up an unsuspecting bird flying overhead. Lin Fong freezes in horror. If anyone witnessed this, they'd think demons had infiltrated the city. Without wasting a second, he grabs a shovel and rips the mutated plant out of the soil, desperate to erase all evidence of it. The sight shocks him. His new mana was powerful enough to turn an ordinary crop into something so terrifying. Yet he realizes that if he can master this fusion of energies, he might finally create the unique plant strains his father always dreamed of but could never achieve. Just then, the TV blares breaking news. The Necromancer Heya has rebelled and assassinated Dean Yu-E. A massive bounty has been issued. Lin Fong watches grimly. So everything really did happen, and now more than ever, he must hide his necromancer powers. He decides he needs to name his undead servants to avoid raising suspicion. With a grin, he settles on calling them farmhands. After all, for a spiritual farm master, that sounds perfectly normal. Back on TV, another announcement airs. The Extraordinary Academy is expanding enrollment due to rising demon threats. Lin Fong's eyes light up. The academy is ideal, secure, fertile, and stocked with resources he needs to test his evolving abilities. Soon after, he arrives at the academy's registration plaza, prepared to begin his risky plan. At the registration desk, the instructor asks for his details. Lin Fong introduces himself. Lin Fong, 18 years old, level 1 spiritual farm master. Instructor Lee narrows his eyes, suspicious of a class he's never heard of. Assuming it's a low-tier support class, he orders Lin Fong to release his aura. Lin Fong obliges, summoning a bright green farmer aura in his palm. The moment Lee sees it, he bursts into laughter, dismissing it as nothing more than the useless aura of a farmer. He waves Lin Fong away and calls for the next applicant. Students in line begin snickering, mockingly telling him to get back to the fields and stop dragging down the academy's standards. Ignoring the jeers, Lin Fong calmly insists that his class is mutated and that his fundamentals are solid. He politely requests a chance to take the exam. Lee scowls. He demands to know what fundamentals a level 1 nobody could possibly have and summons security to remove him. But Lin Fong quickly pulls out the academy's pamphlet and points to the rules stating anyone can take the entrance exam. He warns Lee that if he's denied, he'll report him. He pretends to call the administration right on the spot, complaining loudly that an instructor is trying to block him from taking the test. Furious, Lee lunges forward and snatches the phone out of his hand to stop the call. Getting in Lin Fong's face, he snarls that he refuses to believe a level 1 farmer could ever hope to pass the academy's entrance exam. The crowd murmurs that Instructor Lee's reaction is completely over the top, and a rumor spreads that he failed to earn a promotion, forcing him to be demoted to admissions duty. Annoyed by the chatter, Instructor Lee shouts at the top of his lungs that anyone who doesn't want to take the test should just leave and get lost. After his little outburst, he finally gathers the candidates and leads them to the testing area, where Lin Fong at last has a chance to prove himself. At the exam site, massive roots twist and shift across the ground. Instructor Lee sneers at Lin Fong, telling him it's not too late to admit defeat and walk away. Ignoring him, Lin Fong politely thanks the man and steps into the maze-like root system with his two undead servants disguised as magical summons. Inside the labyrinth, one candidate is effortlessly flung aside by the giant vines. Lin Fong crouches down, studying the terrain carefully. This test is clearly anything but simple. Focused and calm, he already has a plan to clear the challenge in one go. He pulls out some carrot powder, a powerful attractant for demon rabbits, and declares that he's about to introduce everyone to the true terror of industrial agriculture. Without hesitation, he scatters the concentrated powder across the ground as bait. Moments later, a small pink rabbit with a horn emerges, drawn by the scent, and discovers a few carrots waiting for it. But before it can eat, Lin Fong's two undead servants materialize and mercilessly attack the creature. Deciding that waiting for rabbits to wander in is too slow, Lin Fong orders his servants to draw out every rabbit nearby. Smiling, he tells his farmhands to hunt down as many demon rabbits as they can find. Obeying immediately, the two spirits race off into the twisting roots. The Necromancer servant begins the hunt, eliminating one demon rabbit with a single devastating blow. Meanwhile, the Dean's spirit traps multiple rabbits at once, capturing them in shimmering bubbles of blue energy. Watching them work, Lin Fong is impressed by their speed and power. It seems he really did hit the jackpot with these two. Suddenly, a loud bell rings. The time for the exam has ended. Instructor Lee announces the test's conclusion and orders all candidates to submit the rabbit horns they collected. Several students fail on the spot for not retrieving a single horn, while others complain that rabbits were strangely scarce this time. When Lin Fong steps forward, Instructor Lee scoffs and calls him trash, loudly betting that he didn't manage to collect even one horn. Our protagonist calmly raises his hand and reveals a magic ring, the storage item he used during the test. A moment later, a mountain of demon rabbits comes pouring out of a ring, completely burying Instructor Lee in front of the entire crowd. Lee and his assistant stare in shock, utterly overwhelmed by the absurd number of rabbits the young man managed to capture. With a triumphant grin, Lin Fong announces that he collected 500 horns, then politely asks if the instructor would like to count them one by one. Panicking, Instructor Lee sputters that it's impossible and accuses Lin Fong of cheating. Before he can escalate the accusation, a director arrives on the scene, furious. He reprimands Lee for making the process difficult for candidates, and reveals that the demon rabbits were actually his personal pets, meant to test the students' adaptability. Turning to Lin Fong, the director's expression becomes serious. He informs him that he has passed the preliminary exam. Lin Fong bows respectfully and thanks the director for his fair judgment. However, the director continues studying him with narrowed eyes. He remarks that for some reason, Lin Fong feels strangely familiar. Hearing this, Lin Fong tenses up, his eyes widening in concern. He quickly averts his gaze, wondering if the director has already figured out something he shouldn't know. The director stood before Lin Fong, questioning him about his connection to Professor Linsher. The atmosphere grew tense as Lin Fong carefully assessed the director's intentions. Feeling reassured that nothing had been detected, Lin Fong mentally confirmed that his special abilities remained hidden. To deflect suspicion, he confidently claimed that Professor Lin, she was his father, and casually asked if the director knew him. Caught off guard, the director's demeanor softened. Referring to Lin Fong as the son of an old friend, he even offered to help him enroll in the academy if needed. Before he could say more, a sharp-voiced instructor with pink hair interrupted, warning that people were watching. Embarrassed, the director laughed it off, calling his offer a casual remark, while several onlookers observed the exchange with interest. Before leaving, he addressed Lin Fong as his nephew and promised a personal tour of the academy once his enrollment was official. As the director walked away, Lin Fong watched him warily, unsettled by the man's excessive friendliness and strange energy. Taking control of the moment, the pink-haired instructor called forward the students who had passed, while encouraging those who had failed not to lose hope. Elsewhere inside the Sunday Wheel Division's investigation room, a group of officers discussed the disappearance of Dean Yue and Hai Xiao Wan. One officer theorized that Dean Yue had likely discovered Ha's secret and was eliminated during the investigation. He further speculated that the real culprit was someone who had stolen Hai Xiao's inherited talent and manipulated events from the shadows. The investigator insisted that finding the inheritor of the Necromancer talent would be the key to solving the mystery. However, a colleague urged him to avoid making baseless assumptions, pointing out the lack of solid evidence. Frustrated, the investigator slammed his hands on the table, declaring that he would uncover the truth, even if no one believed him. Two Academy members questioned whether they should intervene in the investigator's increasingly erratic behavior, but hesitated, aware of his backing from the Duke's faction. Another officer brushed off the concern, arguing that the academy should focus on genuine training, not political maneuvering through credentials. Meanwhile, the investigator received deadly orders. If Ha was found, he was to be killed immediately, along with anyone using Necromancer powers. In the retest mission hall, a glowing portal shimmered beside the stage. As students gathered, a wave of nervous anticipation filled the air. The instructor stepped forward and announced the next challenge, clearing a level 5 dungeon, the demonic beast lair, within 3 hours. A murmur of disbelief spread through the crowd. Most students were only at level 4 or 5, and the time constraint made the task seem nearly impossible. The instructor clarified the rules. Students were not required to face the dungeon alone. They could form teams of up to 5 members before registering. The room immediately erupted with activity as students scrambled to form teams. Students loudly called out for team members, seeking specific roles, from elemental mages to tanks and healers. Amid the commotion, Lin Feng quietly observed, reviewing data on his tablet. He kept a low profile, determined not to reveal his necromancer class. A pink-haired girl approached him with confidence, introducing herself as a level 7 magic user and asking to form a team. Lin Feng recognized her strength, but remained cautious about exposing his hidden abilities. Concluding it was safer to work alone, he politely declined, stating his preference to go solo despite the risks. She accepted his decision with grace and wished him luck. Their brief exchange ended respectfully. With quiet determination, Lin Feng walked away, resolved to complete the mission alone and protect his secret. At the mission desk, he requested to take on the challenge. Though the instructor expressed concern, Lin Feng reaffirmed his decision to face the dungeon solo. As he prepared to enter, the instructor warned him about the reward, Black Bear's Gall, a powerful relic intended for solo completion. While it offered a significant boost for lower-level players, it came with immense risk. Lin Feng accepted the warning with a calm smile, took the entry token, and nodded politely in reassurance. The scene shifted to the massive entrance of the demonic beast lair. A glowing portal pulsed ominously, flanked by armored personnel standing on high alert. As Lin Feng approached, an official stopped him, asking about his team. No one had expected a solo participant. Lin Feng confirmed he was alone, drawing surprised glances from a nearby staff. They advised against it, citing the danger, but he calmly pointed out that the rules allowed solo entries. His composure and quiet confidence left no room for argument. Watching from the sidelines, 2 examiners whispered among themselves, speculating that Lin Feng must be aiming for the solo reward. One doubted he had the strength, while the other admired his courage. Ultimately, they wished him good luck and stepped aside. Inside the dungeon, Lin Feng entered an eerie cavern littered with monstrous eggs and jagged stone. The trial had begun. Moving deeper into the lair, he encountered aggressive monsters. He met them head-on, unfazed by their levels. 2 beasts lunged toward him, but he remained calm. Level 3 and Level 4 creatures no longer posed a challenge. Yet, as more waves surged forward, he noted the overwhelming numbers. It was more than he anticipated. In the distance, dozens of red-eyed beasts stirred within their nest, a perfect opportunity to test something new. Raising his hand, Lin Feng activated his necromancer powers. Lightning-like energy erupted from the ground as he summoned an undead army. Skeletal warriors burst forth around him, their forms crackling with dark energy. With a commanding gesture, he sent them forward. Streams of spectral energy surged as his minions launched into battle. The true fight had begun. The skeletal and shadowy figures clashed fiercely with the dungeon monsters. Though mindless, Lin Feng's undead overwhelmed their enemies through sheer numbers and unrelenting aggression. He observed the battle calmly, noting that these monster-form undead retained some of their original traits and required less mana to sustain. Amused, he even wondered if they could handle mundane tasks outside of combat. As the fight escalated, Lin Feng unleashed more energy, summoning with greater force. His control expanded across the cavern, dark lightning crackling in the air. A powerful figure surged forward, an advanced undead warrior cleaving through enemies with ruthless precision. Unlike the basic minions, this high-level skeleton exhibited intelligence, discipline, and refined combat abilities. Leading the front lines, the warrior launched a devastating assault, annihilating waves of beast eggs and hatchlings with rapid, calculated strikes. The very ground trembled beneath the onslaught. Lin Feng analyzed the undead's performance with keen interest. Human form undead were not only stronger, but retained tactical instincts from their past lives. They adapted mid-battle and required minimal direction. A grin spread across Lin Feng's face. He imagined assigning them tasks like weeding or fertilizing his fields when not engaged in battle. Suddenly, a surge of light engulfed him. A system message appeared. Level up, level 7 achieved. His efficiency had far exceeded expectations. Surrounded by his summoned army, Lin Feng took quiet satisfaction in his rapid progress. He had already reached the final chamber. Standing before the looming gate, he stepped into the boss room with unwavering focus and strategic clarity. Chain snapped. A massive beast roared as it broke free. The final challenge had awakened. Lin Feng didn't flinch. It was time to test his full combat strength. With clinical precision, he issued commands to his undead. Restrain the boss. Apply curses. Exploit weak points. The battle began. The monster thrashed, its massive limbs caught in glowing chains as Lin Feng's minions attacked in synchronized waves. From a safe distance outside the blast zone, he remained seated and composed, monitoring the battle as floating mana values pulsed around him. His undead units displayed remarkable coordination. The skeletal warrior exploited every opening with clean, efficient strikes. One undead caster unleashed a powerful spell. Searing purple energy pierced the boss's core. A massive explosion followed. Blinding light filled the cavern. The confrontation was over. As the light faded, a message appeared. Lin Feng had reached level 8. Loot lay scattered, a sign of a complete dungeon clear. Inspecting the reward, Lin Feng held up a potion. However, its effect, a small stat boost, left him unimpressed compared to his farm-grown buffs. Suddenly, the dungeon system processed his dual occupation, farmer and necromancer. 2 separate reward boxes materialized. He realized dual classes granted dual rewards. This opened new possibilities for combining dungeon mechanics with farming techniques. Excited by the idea, Lin Feng considered manipulating rewards using crops in the future. His farmer's mindset kicked in immediately as he exited the dungeon. Others were stunned. They couldn't believe he had completed the challenge alone. Accusations and disbelief filled the air. To the crowd, he looked far too clean to have survived such a brutal battle. Back at the mission desk, Lin Feng submitted his clear report to the instructor, who verified it without delay. The system confirmed a successful clear. A green check marked his record. The instructor, wide-eyed, acknowledged his success. The instructor suddenly shouted in shock, declaring that she would submit the mission scroll immediately as she questioned what Lin Feng had handed to her. When she raised her head and looked at him, she remarked that acting alone was still far too adventurous. Lin Feng let out a quiet chuckle, replying that he understood and thanking the instructor for her guidance. Her expression gradually softened with a touch of grace as she informed him that the final instructor interview would begin soon at the academy and told him to rest first. After giving him all the necessary commands and details, she dismissed him. After some time, Lin Feng walked toward the designated area, completely absorbed in his thoughts. Behind him, a small group of bullies watched him with visible interest. On the other side, the pink-haired instructor adjusted his glasses and silently hoped that the situation would teach Lin Feng a lesson. In his view, surviving in the academy was difficult for anyone who acted out of hatred. Lin Feng continued along the forest path, his mind still turning over everything that had happened. As he moved deeper into the area, his gaze suddenly sharpened. He sensed movement behind him and quickly realized that a few brats were secretly following him. He stopped and raised his hand slightly, noting to himself that someone clearly intended to trail him. He wondered whether they truly meant to cause trouble or were simply foolish enough to try. Behind him, the 3 men whispered among themselves. The scar-faced one admitted that Lin Feng managing to clear his dungeon alone meant he was far from simple, and he wondered if they were making a mistake. The rat-faced one dismissed his concern, mocking him for being afraid, and saying that Lin Feng was still under level 10 with limited strength. He insisted that they only needed to wait for the right moment. The large man added that Lin Feng had just come out of their dungeon, so his energy consumption must be high, and none of them had seen him recover. The scar-faced man nodded as he looked at Lin Feng again, agreeing that relying on numbers was the best way to overwhelm him. When they noticed Lin Feng moving farther away, the 3rd man urged the others to act quickly. The 3 of them, driven by greed, decided to ambush and rob him. One of them shouted loudly, demanding that Lin Feng stop and calling him a farmer, accusing him of daring to enter the place without their permission. Lin Feng halted and stared at the 3 men, his expression twitching in disbelief. He pointed at them, wondering if they were truly shouting at him. The 3 men then attempted to show off their strength. The rat-faced man lifted a dumbbell as if showing off his strength and accused Lin Feng of hoarding too many rewards for himself, asking whether he wasn't afraid of attracting trouble. Another man chimed in, insisting that Ling Fong must have relied purely on luck to clear the dungeon, and demanded that he hand over both the demon bear gel and the skill scroll. The third man cursed at him, calling him ridiculous and telling him to know his limits, threatening to show him the power of real combat techniques. He dismissed Ling Fong as nothing more than worthless trash. None of them realized who they were provoking. To outsiders, Ling Fong's first ability appeared to be nothing more than a simple plant-type farming skill. But his second ability was far more terrifying, an ability belonging to a true necromancer. It reminded him of Tansun, who also looked like a farmer with harmless plant-type abilities, yet delivered brutal lessons to anyone who underestimated her. Ling Fong ignored their insults, feeling only irritation. He wondered why, of all the examinees present, they had chosen to target him. To him, their attempt was nothing more than a pointless waste of time. One of the boys, the one with red-stained teeth, stepped forward and asked whether Ling Fong was truly unaware or simply pretending. Another rushed ahead and jabbed a finger toward Ling Fong's nose, yet ended up poking Ling Fong's chest repeatedly as he loudly repeated himself. He claimed that the exclusive solo clear reward, the Demon Bear Gel, was a valuable item that granted 10 stamina points, insisting that someone like Ling Fong had no right to possess it. He demanded that Ling Fong hand it over immediately. At that moment, Ling Fong finally recognized the name. He realized the item in question was indeed the Demon Bear Gel, an item worth a 10% stamina recovery. To him, it looked no different from a stamina-boosting watermelon. The comparison alone disgusted him, and his expression twisted as though he were about to vomit. The entire situation felt absurd. In his mind, something that granted only 10 stamina points was hardly impressive. The watermelons he grew every summer provided more than that, and he never had to risk his life in a dungeon to obtain them. Ling Fong let out a quiet chuckle and revealed the item they were talking about. He held out the Demon Bear Gel and handed it over as if it meant nothing to him. To him, the item was insignificant. The red-toothed man grew excited and reached out to grab the packet. But before his fingers touched it, a sudden burst of furious fire energy erupted. The explosion forced him to jump back in shock, unable to comprehend how such destructive energy had appeared. A fiery wisp shot past him, and the bullies barely managed to dodge it. At that moment, a small, adorable maid hurried forward. She positioned herself in front of Ling Fong, spreading her arms protectively. She glared at the three men and reminded them that private fighting was prohibited in the academy, asking if they wanted to be disqualified for causing trouble. Ling Fong stood still, surprised by her sudden bravery. One of the men sneered and claimed the matter had nothing to do with her, insisting that the item Ling Fong was holding rightfully belonged to him. The mage girl narrowed her eyes, fixing him with a sharp, icy glare. She raised her voice and declared that if she had chosen to intervene, then it absolutely had something to do with her. She warned them to leave immediately, or she would report everything to the instructors. As she lifted her magic staff, lightning energy surged around her. She told the three that if they insisted on causing trouble, she would make them suffer and teach them a proper lesson. The giant man burst out laughing, claiming she would never get the chance to report anything. Since she insisted on protecting this dirty farmer, he announced that they would deal with her as well. The three men rushed forward, shouting that they should finish quickly and clean up the trash. Ling Fong observed the girl carefully. She was a level 7 mage, strong enough to handle minor threats on her own. He believed she could take care of these insignificant troublemakers, but he found it irritating that anyone would get involved over something as worthless as a 10-point item. The mage girl clenched her teeth and shouted at the bullies, calling their methods disgusting and filthy. She turned her gaze toward Ling Fong and asked if they should join forces. Before she could finish her question, she froze in shock. Ling Fong suddenly dashed away from the fight, wanting nothing to do with a pointless conflict over such a trivial item. She called out, trying to stop him, but he tossed his pouch toward her with a quick flick of his wrist. He flashed her a playful smile and told her the item was hers now, thanking her for her kindness and giving her complete freedom to do whatever she wanted with it. The three men roared angrily and charged at the mage girl. The giant man shouted that Ling Fong had dared to help her and claimed he would simply take the reward from her instead. The mage girl summoned her power, releasing a fierce surge of energy while yelling at them, furious that they were now trying to rob her directly. The scene shifted to the temporary rest area. Ling Fong calmly opened his bag and examined the items inside. He pulled out the skill scroll dropped in the dungeon and realized it was completely useless to him. He wondered why everyone had fought so desperately over it in the first place. As he thought about it more carefully, an idea flashed through his mind. He questioned whether he simply needed to activate it. With that thought, he waved his hand. A burst of thunder flickered around him as he began to open the scroll. Enchantment symbols awakened, and a notification appeared, informing him that he had unlocked a new skill. It was a beginner-level special cultivation technique that consumed mana and specific materials to cultivate, strengthen, and summon. It also had the chance to increase levels, improve quality, or awaken new abilities. Green and purple energy erupted from both his hands as the scroll's power merged with his body. Ling Fong stared at the glow in surprise before a confident smile spread across his face. He noted that the result was worth the effort. The scroll had activated successfully, though it now required a greater amount of mana from both of his classes. Ling Fong summoned Hai Shirao, Yu Yi, and the crocodile creature. He stood before his small team and announced that they needed to test the new skill. Power surged through his arm as he raised it, excitement flickering in his eyes. He signaled for the test to begin. In the next moment, Hai Shao was enveloped in a swirl of purple energy. As soon as Ling Fong activated the skill, Hai Shao leaped from level 6 to level 8. Yu Yi experienced the same transformation, instantly rising from level 6 to level 8. The demon bear climbed to level 9, while both the lizard and the eagle creatures also displayed noticeable increases in strength. Ling Fong observed the results and felt genuinely satisfied. His two generals looked back at him with confident smiles, as if acknowledging his pride in them. He shifted his gaze toward them and admitted that the only drawback was his lack of new fields. He couldn't bring himself to damage the farmland at home simply to experiment with new crops. With that thought, he dismissed his summons and exhaled in relief. After lying on the sofa for a while, he eventually left the room. The moment he stepped outside, he froze in surprise. The mage girl was standing in front of him, holding something in her hands. She called his name loudly and asked if he had forgotten his demon bear gel. Ling Fong smiled at her words and told her the item was already hers. He had no interest in it and couldn't understand why she was thinking so much about something so insignificant. The kitten-like mage girl stared at him in shock. She insisted that the item was valuable and couldn't comprehend how he could give it away so casually. Even though she was a level 7 mage, she wasn't arrogant, just genuinely kind. Ling Fong, however, dismissed the matter entirely. To him, something of that level was nothing more than a ridiculous, low-grade reward, something he compared to a useless watermelon. His expression turned tired and unimpressed as he questioned why anyone would treat such rotten material like a treasure. He assumed she simply didn't know any better. Hearing this, the mage girl's expression tightened with irritation. She raised her voice, asking if she had heard him correctly and whether he had truly called it a rotten thing. Ling Fong walked deeper into the wooded area, checking both sides of the path. As he moved forward, he muttered to himself that no one should be around, making it the perfect place to test his skill on plants. He released a wave of purple dark energy and wondered what effect the new ability would have on crops. At first, when he infused the energy into the plants, he saw no immediate change. He clicked his tongue in annoyance, thinking nothing had happened. But then he froze. The two plants suddenly trembled, shifted, and transformed into mutated plant monsters. They rushed forward, moving on their own, as though they truly had life. Ling Fong stared in shock, unable to believe his eyes. He muttered that these things had actually come to life, and were walking on their own feet. The absurdity of the situation twisted his expression into pure disbelief. Meanwhile, Tuka, an intelligent senior instructor known for investigating the deaths of Hai Shirao and Yu Yi in previous chapters, leapt onto a tree branch. His spirit energy detector indicated that something powerful was approaching. From his elevated vantage point, he sensed the aura of a necromancer and confirmed that his earlier suspicion had been correct. He possessed unusually sharp instincts for such things. But as he scanned the area, he suddenly froze the moment his eyes fell on Ling Fong. His expression tightened in surprise. He dropped down from the tree and immediately grabbed Ling Fong by the shoulder. In a rude, demanding tone, he asked if Ling Fong was a farmer, judging by his clothing. Ling Fong turned his head slightly and asked whether a farmer had somehow provoked him. Tuka's expression twisted with disgust as he stared at Ling Fong. He demanded to know whether a strange person had appeared nearby. Keeping a blank, clueless expression, Ling Fong replied that he thought he had seen someone. Tuka leaned closer and demanded to know where he had seen that person. Ling Fong slowly raised his hand and pointed directly at Tuka, asking if he was searching for a strange person. He added, with straightforward bluntness, that the strange person Tuka was looking for was standing right in front of him. Tuka's annoyance snapped instantly into fury. Flames erupted around him as he shouted that Ling Fong dared to humiliate him. He declared himself an ally of Sunil Academy and the nephew of the Iron Lion Duke. Enraged that a lowly farmer would speak to him so insolently, he threatened to kill Ling Fong and lifted his arm, fiery energy gathering for an attack. Tuka clearly intended to teach Ling Fong a harsh lesson. He had no idea that Ling Fong was the very necromancer he was searching for, nor that Ling Fong already possessed knowledge of multiple necromancy secrets hidden even from the academy. Ling Fong stared into the thick stretch of woods ahead just as Tuka let out a furious roar and activated his ability. The man's shout thundered between the trees, spitting insults about him being a worthless farmer and promising to make him regret everything. Ling Fong didn't even twitch. He simply lifted his arm to block the flood of energy rushing at him, his expression cold and unchanged. "The farmer you look down on can beat you with one hand," he replied evenly. Tuka answered with pure rage, lunging forward while unleashing another wave of power. Ling Fong murmured, "Try this," remembering the effect he had discovered earlier. The monk shroom growing on his field had soaked up undead mana, and its powder caused intense paralysis. The first time he tested it, he collapsed for an entire day, unable to move. Ground into fine dust, it worked like a powerful stun blast. He crushed the dried mushroom into powder and flung it directly into Tuka's face. Tuka inhaled the particles immediately. Violent coughing racked his body as dizziness overtook him, his limbs losing strength as though an entire mountain had fallen onto his shoulders. His voice grew sluggish and uneven. What did you do to me, you damn farmer? Why can't I move? Where did my strength go?" Ling Fong covered his nose to avoid the powder's scent and stepped in. "You're just unfortunate," he said. "It's monk shroom powder. It grows in the fields. And this," he flashed a ridiculing grin, "is the skill of a farmer." A surge of green plant energy gathered in his palm before he struck Tuka squarely in the neck. When the forest finally quieted, Tuka was already subdued, left dangling against a tree, stripped and trembling, looking more like a disgraced clown than an elite cadet. Shame and panic shook him pathetically. Ling Fong shot him a frosty, mocking stare. "You can't even beat a farmer, yet you dare call yourself an allied? How foolish can you be? Stay here and cool off. When someone finds you, treat it as your first real lesson." With that, Ling Fong turned to leave until an announcement echoed through the forest. "All cadets, gather in the auditorium for the instructor interview." He stopped, nodded to himself, and muttered, "The interview's starting. I need to head over." He walked toward the Extraordinary Academy's main auditorium, where chaos was already underway. Cadets filled every corner, shoving and pushing to reach the interview area. Ling Fong moved through the clamor with calm confidence, as if the noise around him were made of thin, fragile paper. "This should be the right place," he said while scanning the area. Behind him, whispers flared like sparks catching fire. "Is that him? The guy who cleared a level 5 dungeon alone? I heard he just got lucky and escaped at the perfect moment. He's nothing compared to Shirue or Boku. He might be better than a regular cadet, but I'm a level 5 allied. Advancement belongs to me." Ling Fong heard them, but none of it mattered. He dismissed the chatter instantly. It was nothing but useless noise. A familiar voice suddenly sounded behind him. A cheerful, slightly scatterbrained girl skipped over with a playful grin. "Here, I'm giving this back to you," she said, holding an item out toward him. Ling Fong lifted his hand in a relaxed, almost indifferent gesture, making it clear to everyone watching that he couldn't care less. "You can keep it," he said. "It's useless to me. It won't help me at all." The girl tilted her head, glancing at Ling Fong before looking down at the object again. Her brows furrowed in confusion. "I don't get it. Why does that pupil treat something like this like it's some kind of treasure?" she muttered under her breath. Ling Fong offered no explanation. The thought crossed his mind briefly, but pupil kept mumbling to herself, baffled. A short while later, inside the auditorium where the instructor interviews were being held, the director sat at the center of the stage. His expression was severe as he addressed the hall. "For this interview, instructors will choose their students, and students will also choose their instructors. Both sides rely on each other's success." His tone grew sharper. "The students I call will step forward first." The first name echoed through the hall. Shuren. A boy with an eerie presence approached, stiff, mechanical, almost unsettling. With a steady, measured tone, he introduced himself. "I am Shuren, level 6, Earth Attribute Warrior. This is my ability." Thick earth armor rose across his body, forming a complete battle suit. It looked solid, polished, and formidable. A massive instructor in the front row leaned forward, pointing at him with interest. "Not bad. I'm a level 44 Earth-based instructor. How about becoming my student?" Shuren's eyes lit up, excitement practically bursting out of him. Next, the director called Ing Wu. Then came the name everyone had been waiting for. Ling Fong. Whispers exploded instantly. Ling Fong stepped forward with calm confidence and revealed his occupation. Level 8, Farmer, Plant Spirit Farming Lord. A pink-haired instructor blinked in surprise. Level 8 at his age, his potential is remarkable. But the instructor behind her let out a quiet scoff. Look again. He's just a farmer. More murmurs followed, mocking, dismissive. Our academy trains frontline fighters, one instructor muttered. Not ordinary cadets destined to be cannon fodder. They barely acknowledged Ling Fong, treating him like he didn't deserve to stand among them. A giant instructor in the back raised a counterpoint. But both his preliminary exam and retest scores were exceptional. The director's expression shifted, turning cold and unreadable. Everyone has different occupations. Let's perform a combat ability assessment for this child. Several instructors voiced their agreement immediately. The director then leaned in and asked, Ling Fong, are you certain you wish to proceed? Your ultimate goal is to face demons on the front lines. If you lack combat potential, stepping onto the battlefield would be nothing but a pointless sacrifice. Ling Fong paused for a moment. A combat assessment. With my current strength, I can't pass unless I reveal my Necromancer ability. After a brief hesitation, he agreed. A temporary arena was cleared within the auditorium. Students gathered around as Ling Fong stepped into the center. A boy approached with a faint, amused laugh. The test is simple, he said. Last 5 minutes against me. Show us you have real combat ability. The massive instructor released a surge of golden aura that flooded the space. Several cadets in the back dropped to their knees under the pressure. So this is the aura of a level 44 warrior, one cadet gasped. I can't even move. His gaze flicked toward Ling Fong. But that guy, he's not even reacting. How's he standing so calmly? The instructor's grin widened with excitement. Good. If you can stand under this pressure, I'll take you seriously. Use everything you have. Attack me at full strength. Ling Fong steadied his breathing. Level 44 pressure. Strong but manageable. He gathered energy in his palm and whispered, Come out, my servant. A strange ripple surrounded him, and a creature materialized, its body wrapped in dense nature mana. Its true aura was completely concealed. Perfect, Ling Fong thought. Covering an undead with nature mana hides its identity. No one will suspect a cabbage-shaped bear is an undead summon. The instructor studied the creature, unable to read its nature. Oh, a rare variant type, he muttered. Such concentrated nature mana. Interesting. He tightened his grip on his dagger. Come, then. Ling Fong's summon lunged, and the instructor reacted instantly, carving multiple rapid cuts across its body. On the platform, the director rose slightly, stunned. What remarkable loyalty, he murmured. Any normal summon would vanish after taking that much damage. Yet this one persists. The clash continued, steel and claws, aura and mana colliding. The director glanced sideways and muttered under his breath, Old fool, you're getting soft. Ling Fong narrowed his eyes. They're undead. They don't feel fear or pain. As long as I supply mana, they'll keep going. Across from him, the instructor clenched his jaw in irritation. I wanted to show off in front of the students, but this boy's stronger than I expected. Looks like I need to stop holding back. He gave Ling Fong a warning. Kid, if I destroy your summon, I'll compensate you later. Watch closely. He activated his trusted Bhaskar skill and charged with full power. One decisive strike shattered Ling Fong's summon, dispersing it instantly. Straightening his posture, golden light flickering around him, the instructor let out a proud laugh. Ling Fong, it's over. I crushed your summon. Ling Fong said nothing. Misreading his silence, the giant instructor softened and smiled broadly. You must feel awful losing a summon. It's all right, let it out. I like geniuses who show emotion. But Ling Fong's face remained completely blank. The instructor blinked, stunned. Hey, you idiot, why aren't you upset? Did the grief hit so hard you can't even feel it anymore? Before he could continue, several vine-like tendrils burst out from Ling Fong's sleeve, whipping forward and wrapping around the instructor instantly. In seconds, he was bound from head to toe, like a trapped animal. The instructor roared, thrashing wildly. Damn it, brat. What kind of dirty tricks are you pulling? How many summons do you have? The director's eyes gleamed. Activating his detection skill, he leaned forward and breathed out in excitement. That's a genuine bailing, remarkable. The instructor disappeared beneath the tightening vines, shouting in panic until... Enough! The director stepped forward sharply, stopping the struggle. The instructor exhaled heavily and shot Ling Fong an icy glare. You've proven yourself. You qualify to join the Extraordinary Academy. However, all the nature-type instructors are currently deployed to the front lines. There's no one available to train you right now. Ling Fong asked calmly, then what about my cultivation resources? The Academy never withholds a student's resources, the director replied firmly. You'll receive everything you're owed. Then he added, and as the top scorer of this examination, you may request one reward from the Academy. A strange idea flickered in Ling Fong's mind. They give me freedom and resources? This place is practically heaven. Suddenly, he brightened and spoke loudly. Then I want a piece of land. The room fell dead silent. The director stared at him, frozen as though splashed with cold water. You're refusing precious resources? High-grade equipment? Top-tier artifacts? You want land? Ling Fong grinned and answered without hesitation. No, director. That's exactly what I want. My class is Spirit Farm Lord. How could a farmer have no land? Without it, I can't use my ability properly. A plot of land is far more valuable to me than any equipment. So why wouldn't you approve it? The director exhaled slowly, then smiled. Very well. There's a training wasteland on the west side of the city. It's been abandoned for years. Do whatever you wish with it. And if you need anything else in the future, come see me. Ling Fong bowed politely. Thank you, director. The director nodded. Good. Go rest in the back for now. Scene shift, Academy Board Hall. Tension filled the board hall as investigators pored over Ling Fong's records. One man muttered while reading his file. Spirit Farm Lord, an unusual class. The pink-haired instructor rushed inside. Principal, I have an urgent report. The principal looked up, confused. What happened? She handed him a sealed scroll. One of our investigators reviewed the death of Hai Shao. It has been confirmed he was brutally killed by a necromancer. His body was found near the auditorium. The principal's expression darkened instantly. You mean a necromancer has infiltrated the academy? She nodded grimly. Yes, and we strongly believe the killer is still somewhere nearby. A suffocating silence settled over the hall.
Ling Fong stood at the edge of the training grounds known as the Westerland, checking his map one final time. According to it, the area was situated on the western outskirts of Funwan City. He tapped the marked spot and muttered, Training Westerland. This should be it. Suddenly, a system notification flashed before his eyes. 100 mu of training land located west of Fangwan City. Ownership. Extraordinary Academy. Temporary rental in effect. Duration. 1 year. Ling Fong scoffed. Just 1 year? Typical of this academy to be stingy. Still, he reasoned most people head to the battlefield after a year anyway. It made sense. A grin spread across his face as he released a wave of energy. A full 100 mu of land mine. For at least a year, his grin twisted into something more wicked. This is the pace of a true farming master. With a quick gesture, he summoned his undead. Hei Sha and Yui appeared instantly. Their presence cold and silently attentive. Ling Fong raised his voice, charged with excitement. You too. Let's get to work. His generals got moving immediately, tilling the land, reclaiming soil, and initiating the first steps of cultivation. Meanwhile, Ling Fong leaned back and bit into a slice of watermelon, completely at ease. What a deal, that ancient ruler didn't lie, they work, I relax. But before he could take another bite, Hai Sha tapped him on the shoulder with a skeletal finger. Ling Fong turned. Hai Sha spoke plainly. Reclaiming is done. Both undead stood motionless. Ling Fong blinked in disbelief. Their initiative is really that high? Yui let out a faint buzz, gesturing something incomprehensible. Ling Fong sighed, his expression tightening. Expecting undead to develop full self-awareness is still too much? Or is it? He glared at them, caught between admiration and irritation. After finishing his inspection, Ling Fong left the fenced-off plot. As he walked away, Yui looked up at her master and gave a subtle, grim smile. Small as it was, the expression was unmistakable. Hei Sha and Yui truly had developed some awareness of their own. Now standing outside the field, Ling Fong surveyed the farm where young seedlings had already started sprouting. He checked their stats. Stamina, growth rate, vitality, everything aligned with his expectations. A satisfied smile crossed his face. While other students advanced through relentless trials and exhausting cultivation, Ling Fong improved himself by growing crops that balanced nutrition, soil quality, and a solid foundational structure. He shook his head slightly. It's a pity only my crops can produce this effect. If the yield were just a bit higher, others could benefit too. The demon clan's weak fighters wouldn't remain so fragile. He clenched his jaw. Planting those special crops wouldn't be enough. He needed camouflage. Ordinary fields around the greenhouse to keep everything hidden. 3 days later, Ling Fong stood with a farming tool in hand, barking instructions. Dig here, like this, got it. His undead workers followed his commands with flawless precision. Watching them move, a flicker of pride passed through him. With their help, the vegetable planting process was going far faster than he had imagined. One of the smaller monsters munched on a potato, its tail wagging in a comical, almost puppy-like manner. Ling Fong's glare landed on Michu. The creature froze, then looked up at him with innocent eyes. He sensed a shift in the monster's aura. The undead lizard had reached level 6, and its temporary bone destiny temper had increased. Ling Fong frowned in surprise. The gains were similar to those earned in past dungeons. Yet, the lizard had done nothing notable recently, aside from eating a single potato. He studied the creature carefully as a realization began to form. Could these undead be gaining effects from the special crops planted here? He kept the thought to himself, curiosity sharpening. If the crops could influence even lower-tier undead, the potential of his farm and the strength it could cultivate was far greater than he had imagined. The scene shifted to a dark, unfamiliar place. A massive figure stood within the shadows, his towering form barely visible, only his eyes shone. Cold, red, and sharp, the giant stepped forward, his expression hardening. When I scouted this place earlier, none of this existed. A wall like that, I could slice apart with a single strike. He examined the surroundings like an intruder studying a trap. His gaze settled on Ling Fong, and a trace of amusement appeared. One person inside. Interesting. Before he could move further, something shot through the darkness. A sudden force slammed into him, sending him skidding backward. The earth quaked from the impact. The potato-eating undead creature scuttled forward, and in the next moment, boom! The ground erupted. The giant braced himself, shielding his body from the blast, his face twisted in disbelief. Trying to deal with me using this level of attack? Potato-like monsters burst from the ground, each charged with unstable energy. Explosions ignited one after another. The earth cracked, shockwaves tearing through the area. He clenched his teeth. What kind of ridiculous damage is this? A massive eruption followed. Green energy surged in waves, forming the shape of a twisted, mythical plant creature. Its body loomed, pulsing with power. Purple and green light flared in its eyes, radiating fury. The man coughed blood but stood firm. If not for the Duke's trust, I wouldn't have come here twice. He spat, wiping his mouth and gripping his weapon tightly. Fine. Let's see if you can explode again once I cut you down. He charged at the plant creature, but froze mid-step. A chilling realization struck him. What is this? He whispered. This aura inside the monster. It's undead energy. His shock lingered as another tremor rippled through the battlefield. A memory surged. Standing in a quiet church, facing a solemn priest. The holy figure had said, "You have earned the right to take on this sacred mission. Your task is to find the Necromancer, Shao." After their last contact, he had vanished. He still held an agreement with the intruder's clan. Snapping back to the present, the intruder narrowed his eyes. So this is Hai Zhao's hiding place. Ling Fong's 2 generals were Hai Xiao and Yui undead under his command. That alone made everything far more suspicious. What kind of church has ties to Hai Xiao? Another thought crept in. Why would he hide here? Has he already betrayed our clan? He clicked his tongue in disgust. That Hai Xiao, for the secret technique of immortality. He truly has no shame. He turned away. I shouldn't linger here. Finding him is more important. Night fell. The next morning arrived. Ling Fong stepped outside, humming lightly, a farming tool in hand. Yesterday, I finished crystallizing and fertilizing most of the seeds. Today, I'll handle the rest. He froze. His field was in ruins, the greenhouse had collapsed, the soil was overturned. Everything destroyed. My greenhouse, what happened here? A deep rumble echoed overhead. A massive black beast flew through the sky with a tall man standing on its back. Ling Fong frowned. Who's that? Why would an enforcement officer come here? The enforcement team landed, just as surprised by the devastation. One member, wearing glasses, checked a device. According to the demonic energy detector, the source is right there. Their leader sighed. Wasn't this the training Westerland? How did it end up like this? Could demonic sect members be hiding nearby? The detector flickered again. Another assistant reviewed the data. Sir, this land has already been leased. The leader examined the documents. Even so, we can't rule out demonic involvement. Stay alert. A shimmering protective barrier formed in front of Ling Fong. The leading officer raised a hand. Fellow villager, we're from the enforcement team. Ling Fong eyed them cautiously. Why is the enforcement team here? The officer lifted his scanning device. Our instruments detected demonic energy. Please open the barrier so we can investigate. We're not entirely clear on the situation ourselves, the leader added. Ling Fong frowned. Demonic energy? That's impossible. I only rented this land a few days ago. Before he could continue, another voice cut in. An enraged enforcer stepped forward, fists clenched and aura flaring. It takes this long just to ask a farmer to open a barrier? Tuka was just killed by the demon clan, and now demonic energy shows up here. Suspicious, don't you think? Tuka, the same student who had once bullied the academy's prodigy, he hadn't been killed by the prodigy, but now he was dead. His last investigation had involved Hai Xiao and Yui, both necromancers slain by the demon clan long ago. The furious enforcer pointed directly at Ling Fong. If you ask me, this guy's a demon clan spy. Tuka's death is on him. Suspicion crashed over Ling Fong like a wave. The intruder, the demonic aura, Tuka's sudden and mysterious death. Everything twisted together into a gathering storm. Unknowingly, Ling Fong had stepped into something far more dangerous than he had imagined. The man who had been staring at Ling Fong suddenly spoke, his voice sharp and cold. Spy! Surrender immediately. His gaze was hostile. In his eyes, Ling Fong looked like nothing more than an impulsive troublemaker. The man beside him frowned slightly, recalling the scene before them. After all, Duca had just died, and demonic energy had appeared here once again. He's very suspicious, he said quietly. Both men silently weighed the situation. Then the second man spoke again, his tone more restrained. Student Ling Fong, please cooperate with the investigation and open the barrier. Ling Fong slowly drew in a breath. Looks like I'll have to find a way to drive them away, he thought. He quickly put on an innocent expression and spoke softly. My cultivation is low, and I've always been looked down upon. I only wanted to hide in a quiet place and cultivate in peace. But now, as members of the enforcement team, you still want to pin such suspicion on me. For a moment, the atmosphere wavered. One of the men hesitated. Captain. He already looks pretty pitiful. Before he could finish, the commander shouted angrily, contempt dripping from his voice. Who doesn't know how to pretend to be pitiful? You idiot! Fury flashed across his face. He clenched his fist and struck toward the barrier in front of Ling Fong. At that instant, Ling Fong moved. He grabbed the man's wrist. The barrier shattered completely. The force of the strike rushed straight toward Ling Fong. Oh no, Ling Fong thought calmly. I added too much to my constitution. I don't even feel his punch anymore. But I have to pretend. He loosened his grip and deliberately staggered backward, falling to the ground. The man stared at him in disbelief. I used so much force in that palm strike. Why aren't you dead yet? You definitely have a problem. Ling Fong looked up again, his expression harmless and slightly playful. Are you trying to torture me into confessing so you can close the case quickly? Is that how the enforcement team works? The assistant hurried forward, stopping the commander. Hero, please calm down. Look carefully, this is natural magic. The demon gland repels anything related to nature. Even a 6-year-old knows this. He turned toward Ling Fong. Student Ling Fong, it seems we misunderstood. Your nature magic is extremely pure. We will explain this clearly in the report. He examined Ling Fong carefully and reached out to help him up. Ling Fong immediately showed gratitude. You're truly a good person, my lord. Thank you for giving me justice. The assistant was slightly startled as Ling Fong leaned closer. It's what I should do, he replied. Just fulfilling my duty. At that moment, the captain's face twisted with rage. You bastard! He looked ready to attack again, his teeth clenched tightly. In the end, however, the 3 members of the investigation team turned around and left Ling Fong's residence, the tension finally dispersing. Ling Fong let out a quiet breath. Troublesome, he thought. It seems farming alone isn't enough anymore. I also need strength to protect myself. At that moment, a paper plane suddenly appeared in the air. Ling Fong raised his eyes as it hovered before him. A clear voice rang out from it. Freshman Ling Fong, please gather at the Academy Drilling Ground tomorrow morning to participate in the new student capacity assessment and grinding battle. Absence is not permitted. Extraordinary Academy Affairs Office. After delivering the message, the paper plane burned into ashes and vanished. Ling Fong sighed once more. Why is it so hard to live a peaceful life? Not far away, two figures stood quietly, watching the farmland. A man and a woman, both exuding an extraordinary aura. The woman spoke first, her gaze fixed on the land. Such pure and powerful nature magic. Principal, is this child really just a farmer? The man beside her, the academy's principal, narrowed his eyes slightly. I'm not sure. His system records his profession as spirit farmer master. What puzzles me is why a level 50 nature-type archmage like you, Vera, would take an interest in him. Vera smiled faintly. He feels like a mature class, and he's clearly hiding secrets. Still, this nature magic alone is enough to clear him of any suspicion of colluding with the demon clan. They cannot imitate life-aligned magic, nor can they endure it. The principal looked at the lingering green energy in the air and nodded. Yes, some people should calm down now. Let's go. The real show is yet to come. As his words fell, both figures disappeared without a trace. The scene shifted to the Extraordinary Academy's freshman drilling ground. New cadets gathered together, whispers spreading through the crowd. What's going on? One student muttered. Didn't we already finish the interviews and choose instructors? Why is there another test? Yeah, another replied. I thought classes would start right away. Before the murmurs could grow louder, an instructor stepped forward. Her pink hair fluttered slightly as she spoke sharply. Silence. She swept her gaze across the students. I know you have many questions. You're wondering why a full student assessment is being conducted after the instructor interviews. Her expression turned solemn. Urgent military intelligence arrived from the front line yesterday. The Demon Clan's offensive has intensified, and the fourth test zone outside the third barrier is in imminent danger. Gasps spread among the students. The Academy has received orders to immediately dispatch vital forces to support the front line. The front line? A student exclaimed. We just enrolled. Weren't we supposed to study and cultivate first? The instructor let out a slow sigh. If the nest is overturned, how can the eggs remain intact? If the fourth test zone collapses, the Demon Clan spearhead will point directly at Funwan City. Her voice hardened. At that point, do you think you'll still be able to cultivate peacefully inside the academy? She paused, then spoke firmly. This is not a request. It is a conscription. In humanity's time of peril, no one can stay out of it. At that moment, the students fell completely silent. Nearby, a magic girl stood stiffly, her expression visibly tense. Her brother glanced at her and spoke in a low voice. It seems we really have to go. She forced a smile. It's fine. Don't worry. Her gaze shifted toward Ling Fong. He's too outstanding, she thought. I wonder if he'll be selected for conscription. But what about me? The pink-haired instructor spoke again, her tone firm. All freshmen, follow instructions and enter the drilling ground. Prepare for the practical combat assessment. As Ling Fong walked forward with the group, his expression remained calm. As a farmer-type class, I shouldn't be chosen for the front line, he thought. Otherwise, my farming plans will be completely ruined. Sometime later, inside the drilling ground, a girl stood before Ling Fong, flames faintly flickering around her. You're that spirit farmer, right? She said confidently. I heard you're good at hiding. She flexed her arm and sneered. You'll be reduced to ashes under my flames. Fire surged toward Ling Fong. He stepped aside effortlessly, dodging the attack. Too slow, Ling Fong said calmly. Your magic control is insufficient. That fire couldn't even roast the sweet potatoes in my field. His tone was light but mocking. The girl's face flushed with anger. She clenched her teeth. Oh, great spirit of fire! Sleeping at the edge of the world. Flames danced wildly as she raised her hands. Now I command you. Before the spell could fully form, Ling Fong moved. He stepped in and struck forward with a clean punch. The wind-up is too long, he said plainly. The blow landed squarely in her abdomen. The girl collapsed to the ground, the air knocked from her lungs. A moment later, an announcement echoed through the drilling ground. Winner, Ling Fong. Ling Fong stood steadily, his breathing slightly heavy. Defeating this many opponents should be enough, he thought. I can afford to lose the next match. Just then, a beautiful woman approached and handed him a bottle of water. Thank you, Ling Fong said as he accepted it. She smiled faintly. With your talent and potential, you're fully qualified to aim for a higher platform. Ling Fong. He looked at her in surprise. A higher platform? She nodded. Accumulate enough credits and pass the assessment. You can advance to Suanha Academy. There are better cultivation methods, stronger instructors. You might even obtain a legendary weapon or a powerful demonic beast mount. Ling Fong paused briefly. Thank you for your kindness, he replied honestly. But I don't really need those things. Inside, his thoughts were clear. Too much attention will only attract investigators. The woman was clearly surprised. You don't need any of that? Then what do you want? Ling Fong raised a finger and answered without hesitation. I just want a larger and better piece of land so I can farm in peace. She froze, shock flashing across her face. You misunderstand me, she said after a moment. I mean, what do you want to do after you finish farming this land? Ling Fong remained calm, his answer unchanged. I plan to farm more land. I want more people to have land to cultivate. Anyone who wants to farm should be able to do so. The woman stared at him, completely stunned. More land? Does he intend to reclaim all of it? What an ambitious child. Just then, the principal walked over. If I remember correctly, he said calmly, you're already developing the western land outside the city. Is that still not enough for you to farm? Ling Fong laughed lightly, his eyes bright. When it comes to farming, the more land, the better. Before the conversation could continue, a voice echoed across the drilling ground. Next match. Ling Fong versus Aline. Ling Fong's expression sharpened. I'm coming, he said, stepping forward eagerly. The principal watched him and remarked, that child is quite straightforward. The woman nodded faintly. Since he wants it, let him have it. The principal glanced at her. Are you thinking of taking him in? He's an interesting child, she replied. On the battlefield, Aline stood opposite Ling Fong, flames slowly rising around her. She looked at him seriously. I didn't expect to fight you. I'll go all out in this match. Ling Fong chuckled. To be honest, I can't beat you. I plan to hold back. Aline's expression darkened as she lunged forward. Are you humiliating me? Ling Fong casually raised his arm. No. Starting directly from phase 2. That's how battles are fought. Before Aline could react, something wrapped around her arm. Her eyes widened. A vine-like tentacle had seized her. She reacted instantly, gathering flames around her hand and slashing at it, forcing the vine to retreat. Behind the battlefield, the instructor frowned in shock. A student below level 10 actually possesses magic power this pure. The principal nodded slowly. I was shocked as well when I first saw it. Ling Fong clenched his fist, preparing another strike. The woman's eyes narrowed. Even someone who has reached level 18 in the nature system doesn't have magic power this pure. His future achievements will be limitless. Then she noticed something else, her gaze sharpening. He's using a composite ability. On the field, a translucent barrier formed in front of Aline just as she released a furious surge of fire. The principal looked up, clearly impressed. A seedling like this is extremely rare. If guided properly, the woman suddenly spoke with determination. I've decided. I want to take him as my disciple. The principal froze. What did you just say? She turned to him, her expression serious. I didn't misspeak. I want to take Ling Fong as my disciple. The principal sighed deeply. That's not right. Has your mind been burned by the demon clan? She shook her head without hesitation. Even if it's a burden, I still want him. Her words left the principal completely stunned. At the freshman drill grounds of the Extraordinary Academy, the arena bursts with movement. Lin Feng and Ying collide in a whirlwind of blue energy. Their bodies spin through the air as the force of their attacks shakes the entire platform. Ying charges at him with incredible speed, her weapon striking the ground hard enough to crack the stone. Lin Feng narrowly dodges, the air exploding around them. Amid the fight, Lin Feng stays calm. He thinks he has already demonstrated enough of his strength and decides to feign weakness, planning to admit defeat. Suddenly, a voice echoes across the arena. warning Linfeng that if he continues to slack off, the academy will reclaim the land west of the city and repurpose it. Hearing this, Linfeng slowly turns his head to look back. The speaker is none other than the principal. Linfeng's expression shifts as a spark of blue light flashes in his eye. He immediately refuses. In his mind, he shouts that they cannot take back his land. Absolutely not. That land means everything to him. Ying's eyes widen as she watches Linfeng. She senses his aura completely change. Until now, he had been calmly defending, letting her attacks come to him. But now, she can tell he is finally starting to fight seriously. Green light bursts around Linfeng as he moves his arm. Energy gathers in his palm like a swirling storm, glowing brighter and more intense by the second. His expression is focused and sharp. Across the arena, Ying steps back. Flames erupt from her body as she prepares her strongest spell. Fire coils around her arms, her staff, and even her legs, rising higher and hotter. As she begins chanting, she thrusts her weapon forward, and a massive ball of fire erupts from her magic. The fireball shoots across the battlefield with explosive speed, lighting up the entire arena and tearing into the ground as it races toward Linfeng. Before the fireball strikes, Linfeng charges straight toward it without slowing down. His green energy splits the explosion apart, carving a clear path through the flames, shaking the arena and sending debris flying in all directions. Dust and fire surge upward in a massive blast. Linfeng leaps forward, power radiating from his body. A green light envelopes his fist as he lunges at Eiling. He shouts a single line as he throws his punch, warning her to brace for his serious strike. His fist, glowing with pure green energy, thrusts toward Eiling with enough force to shake the arena. Eiling's eyes widen in shock as her head snaps back from the impact. She gasps loudly, stunned by the sheer strength of the blow. In disbelief, she exclaims that the power he unleashed is incredible. But just before the punch lands, Linfeng halts. He lands gracefully and smiles at her, his expression calm and relaxed, as if the fight had never truly challenged him. Softly, he tells her she let him win. In the audience, the students gape at him with open mouths. One shouts that Linfeng, the farmer, must have been hiding his true strength all along. Another compares himself to Linfeng and admits that he's the one who looks like a farmer now. A woman with bright green eyes watches excitedly. She points out that Linfeng's control over nature's power is extremely rare, saying he commands it as effortlessly as moving a finger and that his mastery approaches the very origin of nature's force. Then Linfeng extends his hand toward Eiling as the announcement rings out clearly. The winner is Linfeng. After the match, Eiling stands with Linfeng's help, her cheeks flushed. She gently holds his hand and looks up at him with admiration, telling him he is strong and that she fully accepts her defeat. Linfeng looks down at her calmly and says she is the truly strong one, and that he only possesses a great deal of physical strength. Nothing more. After saying that, Linfeng let out a relieved sigh, sweat nervously beading on his brow. In his mind, he muttered how close he had come to losing his land. That things had been dangerously tight. Suddenly, the principal appeared behind him, speaking in a cheerful tone. The principal patted Linfeng proudly on the back and said he had done well, adding this was exactly how he should be acting. Linfeng bowed his head slightly and thanked the principal for showing mercy during the evaluation. The principal waved his hand dismissively and told him to keep working hard, expressing that he looked forward to seeing Linfeng grow stronger. As the principal walked away, a mischievous smile spread across Linfeng's face. In his mind, he grumbled that the old man had dared to threaten him with his land. Quietly, he told the principal to just wait. As Linfeng left the training grounds, he muttered under his breath, his expression annoyed. Behind him, the green-eyed woman walked toward a tree. As she moved, the warm evening light bathed the courtyard, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of a nearby tree. Linfeng rubbed the back of his neck, deep in thought. The woman stepped behind the tree, and suddenly, a burst of white fog exploded outward. The next moment, she emerged with a new appearance. She approached Linfeng, now transformed into a girl with long green hair. She wore a green dress, and her bright green eyes sparkled with excitement. Stopping in front of Linfeng, she called out to him with a cheerful smile. She asked student Linfeng to please guide her in her cultivation. Linfeng froze for a moment. His hand rested on his chin, and his eyes widened in confusion. He stared at her as if he had misheard. He asked if she was all right and wondered aloud why a combat class student would seek guidance from a farmer like him. The girl quickly introduced herself, saying her name was Vera and that they had never met before. She explained that she had just watched his entire match and spoke with passion. She said his use of natural mana was incredible. Simple, perfect, and brimming with life and strength. She admitted she had never seen anyone wield the power of nature the way he did. Her bright eyes softened as she shared something more personal. Vera revealed that she had been stuck at her current cultivation level for a long time and believed that observing Lin Feng's path might inspire her. Hearing this, Lin Feng scratched the back of his head awkwardly, his eyes wide and confused as he looked at the green-haired girl. He asked if she was also a nature-type student, explaining that the nature-type instructors were still away on the battlefield and suggesting she wait a little longer. He added honestly that he only knew how to farm. Vera clasped her hands together and spoke earnestly. She said that the truly skilled were the real teachers and that she didn't expect him to formally accept her as a disciple. She only hoped to occasionally visit his fields to observe and learn. She bowed deeply toward him, almost pleading, saying that even if she could only help with small, random tasks, just being near his natural aura would be enough for her. She begged him to allow it. Lin Feng flinched and panicked inwardly, but in his mind, he kept repeating that he couldn't let anyone know what he was growing in his fields. It was too dangerous and his secret would be too easily exposed. He turned his head slightly and spoke with calm politeness, apologizing and saying that as a farmer, he had nothing to teach her. He insisted he only had a lot of physical strength and wasn't good at fighting. But before he could say more, the principal suddenly appeared beside him, placing an arm around his shoulder. The principal leaned in and whispered that since Vera was begging like this, Lin Feng should just agree. For his sake, Lin Feng stared at the principal in shock. The principal leaned close to Lin Feng's ear and whispered a long string of censored words, clearly explaining something privately. Lin Feng responded slowly, saying that whatever the principal had just said didn't sound very good. His expression immediately showed hesitation and concern. After hearing the principal's whispered advice, Lin Feng's face softened. He let out a small sigh and then agreed, saying that if things were like this, then it was settled. Upon hearing this, Vera's face lit up instantly. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she thanked him excitedly, promising she would never disturb him and spoke his name with genuine gratitude. Unable to contain her excitement, she suddenly rushed over and hugged his arm tightly. In a stuttering voice, she asked if she could visit tomorrow or even right now. Lin Feng looked away, embarrassed, but answered calmly that it depended on her, explaining that his land was on the west side of the city. Soon after, they arrived at the West City training wasteland just outside his greenhouse. Vera, now dressed in work clothes, moved around energetically and asked if there was anything she could help with. Lin Feng watched her quietly, thinking that at least her attitude was very serious, but he reminded himself that he could never let her see the crops growing inside his greenhouse. Trying to keep her occupied, he pointed outward and told her to look around outside for now and get familiar with the place. He explained that he was currently giving special attention to the newly bred seedlings. Vera turned her gaze toward the greenhouse, her eyes widening slightly as if sensing something unusual. A thought came to her mind. These crops seemed extraordinary. She observed the fields in front of her and realized something shocking. These crops had been nourished entirely by pure natural mana. They were high-grade plants capable of granting temporary attribute boosts. As she stood there in awe, Lin Feng walked further into the greenhouse, his back turned to her, completely unaware of the amazement spreading across her face. Vera leaned forward slightly, a soft smile forming as she looked at Lin Feng's plants and said he was making her more and more curious. Then, an hour later, Lin Feng returned, but Vera was still outside the greenhouse, crouched on the ground, carefully examining the soil and plants. Suddenly, her eyes widened. She lifted a small piece of soil to her face, staring at it in shock, her expression tightening with disbelief as she whispered that it was unbelievable. Lin Feng approached her from behind, looking down calmly and asking if there was a problem. Vera stood up halfway, still stunned, and asked if the crops here were really grown using just this very ordinary soil. Lin Feng nodded and confirmed it, saying yes, it was simply normal soil. Vera looked even more confused. She asked again, making sure there was no mana crystal powder or elemental lom involved. Lin Feng scratched the back of his head and gave her an easy smile. He explained that he had thought about using those fertilizers, but anything infused with mana was far too expensive. With the little money he had, there was no way he could afford them. Lin Feng pointed to a small wilted plant beside him, its leaves curled and dry under the sunlight. He calmly explained that these plants were probably malnourished. Vera looked at the weak crop, her green eyes narrowing thoughtfully. A quiet inner voice rose in her mind. She noted that Lin Feng's natural mana was extremely powerful, far stronger than normal. If that was the case, she wondered if she could help him somehow. A moment later, she straightened her posture and spoke with a polite smile, telling Lin Feng that the school actually had a special rule. Students could exchange materials dropped in dungeons for certain items at the academy warehouse. Lin Fun immediately stepped closer, grabbing her shoulders with excitement. His face brightened with hope as he asked if what she said was really true. Vera nodded and continued explaining. She gave an example. In Storm Academy's level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, the final boss, the Shadowfall Cobalt Chieftain, sometimes dropped an item called the Chieftain's Fong. She said this Fong could be exchanged for a bottle of Earth Pulse, a rare nurturing resource. Lowering her voice slightly, she added that level 10 dungeons were very difficult, usually needing about 5 people to clear safely. Then she admitted that what she said was indeed true but mentioned this regulation would soon be cancelled by the academy. Hearing this, Linfin's eyes lit up with excitement. A bold smile spread across his face as he clenched his fist. He said loudly this was great and announced he was going right now. Vera watched him dash away with surprising speed, a hoe in his hand. As she looked at his back, she quietly wondered if only someone with such a pure and simple heart could create such pure natural mana. Soon after, Lin Fun arrived at a massive tree-like structure. At its base, a swirling blue-purple portal glowed brightly. The entrance to the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest. 2 academy supervisors stood guard in front of it. A group of students nearby noticed Lin Fun running toward the portal. One of them pointed at him in confusion, asking why a farmer was coming here and guessing Lin Fun must have gone to the wrong place. Another student laughed loudly, mocking the hoe in Lin Fun's hand and joking he must want to dig up wild vegetables inside the dungeon. Someone recognized him and said it was Lin Fun, the freshman, remembering he was only level 8. Shock spread among them as they wondered if Lin Fun was crazy for coming to a level 10 dungeon alone. Ignoring the comments, Lin Fung approached the supervisors respectfully. He handed them a form and said he wanted to apply for solo entry into Gloom Forest. One supervisor took the paper and read it, his expression tightening with concern. He explained that Lin Fung's level was too low and that entering the dungeon alone carried extremely high risk. Lin Fung held up the form with a bright smile and said that, according to academy regulations, any student had the right to apply for dungeon entry. He politely asked the supervisor to allow it. As he spoke, Vera appeared behind him. The supervisor stared at her in shock, his eyes widening as he immediately recognized her. Before he could say more, Vera quickly stepped forward, put a finger to her lips, and signaled him to stay quiet. The supervisor then took a breath, corrected his posture, and acknowledged that the regulations were indeed true. He wished Lin Fung good luck and told him to act within his ability. He warned that if Lin Fung couldn't win against the dungeon monsters, he must retreat immediately. Then Lin Fung walked toward the entrance area. A group of older students watched him move forward. One frowned and asked if Lin Fung was actually an idiot. They whispered among themselves, saying he was nothing more than newly recruited cannon fodder. They insisted he couldn't compare to elite students like them. Another student looked toward the glowing dungeon portal and spoke with cold amusement, saying it would be better if Lin Fung died inside. Having such a useless junior, he muttered, only brought embarrassment to their esteemed Darren Academy. Inside the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, a pack of blue wolf-like monsters rushed forward. Their red eyes glowed fiercely as they lunged at the intruder. Lin Fung stood calmly before them and called out to his undead companions, telling Hai and Yu Ye to clear the way. He ordered the others to follow closely behind and push straight through so they could complete the dungeon quickly. A flash of bright blue light erupted ahead. Hey, covered in glowing markings and swirling energy, charged at the monsters. His movements were lightning fast as he trapped all the wolves in water bubbles. Behind him, Ui appeared clad in dark armor, his body enveloped in a black aura. He swung his weapon fiercely as the wolves lunged at him, but none could slow him down. Soon, their bodies fell lifeless to the ground. Lin Fung approached the corpses. Purple energy began to swirl around his hand as he activated his Necromancer undead summoning power. In a cold, steady voice, he commanded the fallen beasts to rise and serve as his warriors. A small glowing creature appeared beside him, its body shaped like a cute dog. A blue panel identified it as a cobalt undead. Deeper inside the dungeon, the largest chamber opened before Lin Fung. A towering monster stood there, the Shadowfall Cobalt Chieftain, level 12. The creature was massive, with long claws, sharp fangs, and red streaks of energy coursing across its body. Lin Fung looked up at the boss monster without a trace of fear. He placed one hand in his pocket and spoke casually, remarking that this was the final boss, but it didn't seem like much. It seemed this dungeon wasn't anything special either. Lin Fung yawned lazily and told his undead team to go straight for the target, as if the final boss wasn't even worth his effort. A Ahead of him, the massive Shadowfall Cobalt Chieftain raised its glowing weapon high into the air. The boss monster let out a furious roar and swung the blade downward with full force. But before the attack could land, Hai, engulfed in black and purple flames, charged in. His body glowed with dark patterns as he struck the monster head-on. Purple lightning-like energy burst from his attack. Hai slammed into the Cobalt Chieftain with overwhelming strength, creating a huge purple explosion upon impact. The force erupted through the dungeon chamber, sending shockwaves in all directions. The ground cracked, stones scattered, and the air trembled as the explosion hurled the chieftain backward. A brilliant blue shockwave followed, sweeping across the entire battlefield and kicking up debris. A system panel appeared above the scene, announcing that the Shadowfall Cobalt Chieftain had been defeated. Lin Feng gained experience, leveling up to 9. The panel also indicated that he had obtained an item, the Chieftain's Fong. Below the notification, the chieftain's body lay motionless on the ground, surrounded by glowing loot drops. Then another system window popped up, stating that a summonable undead unit had been detected, but the level requirement was too high. It also noted that Lin Feng could not convert the Shadowfall Cobalt Chieftain into an undead summon. Another blue system panel appeared, displaying the progress of the Death F2A glitch, showing the progress bar had reached 10%. Lin Feng regarded the notification with a calm expression and quietly concluded that he still couldn't summon monsters stronger than his own level. He remarked that it was a pity the boss couldn't be revived as an undead, but acknowledged that his goal for this dungeon had already been achieved. The chieftain's Fong began to glow with a strange blue and black energy, as if responding to his system. Lin Feng said that since he had obtained the Fong, he would return to exchange it for fertilizer. With that, he turned and walked toward the swirling blue portal behind him. His figure stepped into the spinning light. As he exited the dungeon, outside the entrance to the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, a group of people waited near the glowing portal, standing on the sandy ground as Lin Feng returned from within. At the Academy's exchange station, an officer called Vera Lord asked if they really had to follow the rules and exchange the item for Lin Feng. He explained that the front lines were in a state of emergency and that their combat class resources had already been allocated, but Vera calmly reassured him. She said it wasn't a combat resource at all. It was simply soil fertilizer intended for nature-type classes. Upon hearing this, the officer in the suit confirmed they had plenty of that in stock. As he spoke, a system window appeared, displaying the updated dungeon record for Gloom Forest. It showed that the solo first clear had been achieved by Lin Feng, who received an SSS rating. He was awarded a special reward, 1 heroic spirit fragment. Just as the message appeared, Lin Feng stepped through the glowing portal wearing a relaxed expression, as if he had merely taken a stroll rather than cleared a dungeon alone. Nearby students stared in shock. One girl exclaimed that the heroic spirit fragment was a rare treasure capable of strengthening someone's soul origin and enhancing their class potential. She couldn't believe he had obtained such a legendary reward. Several boys erupted in anger. One accused Lin Feng of cheating. Another insisted he must have used illegal items or exploited a dungeon bug. More voices joined the crowd, demanding a thorough investigation and calling for all his rewards to be revoked, especially the heroic spirit fragment. Others shouted that he didn't deserve it. Standing behind them, Vera touched her lips with a thoughtful smile. She quietly admitted that she had expected Lin Feng to fight through the dungeon at least a few times. She hadn't imagined he would clear it on his very first attempt. Surrounded by students and instructors, Lin Feng faced the angry crowd confronting him directly. With a weary expression, he asked who he had managed to offend this time. At the entrance to the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, everyone was eyeing Lin Feng with suspicious looks. He honestly couldn't understand why people always acted like this. He was just a farmer who enjoyed farming. What was so wrong with that? Calmly, he stepped forward and told the teacher that, according to Academy rules, he was there to exchange his rewards for resources. Before the teacher could reply, a guard behind him sneered, claiming Lin Feng's rewards had been obtained illicitly and should be confiscated. The teacher immediately denied this, stating the rewards were issued directly by the dungeon system and that the Academy had no authority to seize them. The man was clearly dissatisfied and said he was willing to initiate a resource wager instead. Several others nearby showed interest, clearly having waited for an opportunity like this. Lin Feng asked what a resource wager involved. The man explained it was a winner-takes-all bet where the victor would claim both parties' rewards while the loser would lose everything. Someone else added it would be a dungeon speedrun supervised by Academy teachers to see who could clear it faster. The teacher turned to Lin Feng and asked if he was willing to accept the wager. Lin Feng thought for a moment before saying there was no benefit for him and that it sounded boring. He asked why he should even bother. Hearing this, the man grew visibly frustrated. Gritting his teeth, he said he would add a lamp of nature blueprint to the wager. At that, Lin Feng fell silent. Vera immediately leaned in and whispered urgently that he absolutely had to get that blueprint. She explained the lamp of nature was a growth-type magic tool exclusive to the nature department. A blueprint could only be used once, making it extremely rare. Its effects included significantly shortening crop growth cycles without any side effects, making it the perfect tool for someone who truly loved farming. After hearing this, Lin Feng could no longer resist the offer. Seeing his reaction, the man smirked and stepped closer, mockingly asking if the hillbilly was done thinking and whether he dared to accept the bet. Meanwhile, unseen by Lin Feng, messages flashed on the man's communicator. One reported that Lin Feng had emerged from the dungeon. Another message instructed him to stall Lin Feng at all costs. When the man asked what to do if Lin Feng ignored him, the reply was clear. Use resources to bait him, putting the lamp of nature blueprint on the line. The man hesitated briefly, noting that the blueprint was the foundation of his family's rise, but eventually agreed to proceed. Meanwhile, Lin Feng carefully considered his options. He knew he couldn't reveal his necromancer abilities. However, if it was just a speed run with a supervising teacher, he figured he could hide most of it without much trouble. More importantly, the lamp of nature was simply too valuable to pass up. For what he planned next, it was a perfect fit that would greatly accelerate his progress. With that thought in mind, his decision was made. Lin Feng finally nodded and said he accepted. The other man immediately burst out laughing, saying it was perfect. He added that with a teacher supervising, Lin Feng would be exposed very soon. Shortly after, they entered the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, through the portal. As they stepped inside, the supervising teacher turned to Lin Feng and asked how he had managed to clear the dungeon earlier. Lin Feng calmly replied that he would simply show his strength. As he spoke, a swirling green aura began spreading from his hands. He then called out for his farm hands to come forth. In the next moment, numerous figures appeared behind him. They were all summons, and the scene was undeniably striking. The teacher was slightly taken aback. The summoning speed was incredibly fast, and the quality of the summoned troops was exceptionally high. From the teacher's perspective, this was a perfect chance to observe exactly how Lin Feng had managed to solo clear the dungeon. Even he couldn't help but feel excited as the dense green aura filled the surroundings and plant-based summons continued to form one after another. Then Lin Feng issued a simple command, ordering them to attack with full force. Almost immediately, monsters began rushing toward them. The plant summons surged forward, unleashing their power and crushing the incoming wolves one after another. Green explosions erupted everywhere as the monsters were completely wiped out. The scale of destruction was overwhelming, yet it conveniently helped Lin Feng keep his true secrets hidden. The summons didn't stop there. They pressed onward, unleashing even more magic and leaving no monsters alive in their wake. Watching this, the teacher couldn't hide his shock. He realized it had taken less than a minute to completely wipe out a Cobalt Patrol squad of the same level. The power on display was terrifying. He couldn't help but wonder if this was the result of a special class. Lin Feng then calmly reported that the Cobalt Patrol squad had been cleared and that they were moving on to the boss room. As they advanced deeper, a dark aura began spreading through the forest. From within it, an even more sinister presence emerged, roaring as it appeared. Lin Feng remained calm and gave another order, telling Z to raise the shield and advance, while the others followed closely behind. He added that if any kobolds attempted to flank them, they were to strike without mercy. Once again, green energy surged forward in powerful waves, repeatedly obliterating the monsters in their path. When the boss monster finally launched a massive attack, the summons braced themselves. Since they were formed from aura, the damage they sustained was minimal. They immediately counterattacked. Their combined strike sent the monster flying backward, crashing into the surroundings and filling the area with debris, smoke, and chaos. The teacher was completely shaken. In his mind, he felt that someone with this level of combat potential absolutely had to be reported to the principal immediately. Not a single second could be wasted. The boss monster lay smashed into the ground as green aura continued to surge around Lin Feng. Slowly, the aura began to fade, but the monster remained motionless. The dungeon was clearly about to enter the reward phase. Yet, the teacher was still struggling to process what he had just witnessed. Lin Feng calmly asked whether he had proven himself now. The teacher answered without hesitation, saying there was no doubt about it and that Lin Feng had more than proven himself. After that, they began heading back. As they walked, the teacher noticed that Lin Feng was not following him out of the dungeon and asked if he was staying behind. Lin Feng replied that having the teacher verify things was already enough. He added that the scenery inside the dungeon was actually quite nice and that he wanted to look around a bit more. The teacher nodded, waved, and said he would head out first. He reminded Lin Feng that the dungeon would reset half an hour after being cleared and told him to keep an eye on the time. As soon as the teacher disappeared through the portal, Lin Feng turned and walked straight toward the fallen boss. He thought about how his level hadn't been high enough earlier, then decided to try again. Dark energy gathered as he activated his ability once more. With a firm command, he ordered the monster to rise. From the shadows, the same boss slowly stood back up, now reborn under his control. Lin Feng had gained a new and incredibly powerful summon. Soon after, he exited the dungeon. At the entrance, the students who had doubted him earlier stared in shock. One of them exclaimed that the fierce guy was finally out. Another nervously admitted he had mocked Lin Feng before and wondered whether Lin Feng might hold a grudge. Someone else quickly suggested they all leave together. None of them wanted to stay any longer. The last thing they wanted was to provoke someone like him. The teacher then stepped forward and officially announced that, on behalf of Extraordinary Academy, Lin Feng had proven himself. He handed over the rewards and compensation that rightfully belonged to him. As Lin Feng accepted the bag and the blueprint, a faintly smug expression appeared on his face. He wanted everyone watching to understand one thing clearly. This was not someone to mess with. Inside, he felt genuinely satisfied. Vera then explained that after the administrator came out to testify, the guy who had challenged him realized he was in the wrong, dropped the items, and ran off without another word. Lin Feng glanced at the rewards and immediately focused on what mattered most to him. He cheerfully remarked that, with fertilizer secured, a full harvest was guaranteed. Before leaving, the teacher added that Lin Feng might also want a recording stone containing footage of the student's performance inside the dungeon. A loud, heavy impact echoed as someone threw a powerful punch into a punching bag. The scene shifted to Sun Will Lil Academy, inside Haru's room. Haru was clearly in a terrible mood. As he continued striking the bag, he kept thinking about Lin Feng, calling him a lowly farmer who had humiliated him again and again. He realized that brute force wouldn't work, and academy rules couldn't touch Lin Feng either. No matter how he thought about it, neither path would solve the problem. After pondering deeply for quite some time, an idea finally came to him. He suddenly recalled that Lin Feng had been relying solely on his nature magic and summons to show off. With that realization, he immediately ordered a letter to be sent to the front lines addressed to his uncle, the Count. As the letter was taken away, Haru added another instruction, telling the messenger to have the nature department mentors currently rotating on the battlefield return to the academy as soon as possible. The messenger hesitated and asked if Haru intended to use the nature department mentors to suppress Lin Feng. Haru answered without hesitation, confirming that was precisely the plan. He believed those old mentors valued purity and the strict rules of nature magic above all else. If they were the ones dealing with Lin Feng, he wanted to see if Lin Feng could still act so arrogantly. Meanwhile, back at the Extraordinary Academy, the scene shifted to Vera's room. She was repeatedly watching the dungeon recording, unable to look away. As she studied it, she muttered to herself that Lin Feng was simply a monster. In her eyes, his grasp of nature's power had become instinctual, something far beyond normal comprehension. She briefly considered waiting until tomorrow but immediately dismissed the idea. Instead, she decided to write a letter right away, instructing those same old mentors to return as soon as possible. She felt they couldn't afford to waste any more time. The worst possible outcome would be losing Lin Feng to another faction, and she was determined to keep him on their side. Without hesitation, she sent the letter off, watching it fly away into the distance. As she looked up at the sky, admiring the drifting clouds, a faint smile appeared on her face. Calmly, she thought that if those old geysers didn't hurry back, their lifetime achievement honors were about to slip right through their fingers.